In this video, we're going to look at 10.7, write and graph equations of circles. So in Algebra 1, we had many different functions. We had straight lines, we had quadratics that were U-shaped, but we've never actually looked at the equation and the graph of a circle. So that's where geometry comes in. So the first thing we're going to do is come up with the standard equation for a circle. So here it says, suppose xy is a point on the circle. So here is xy on the circle. Notice it's positive. And hk is the center of the circle. So these are coordinates because this is on a coordinate plane. It says use the distance formula to write an equation and find the radius. Okay? So the distance formula of here to here, if we're looking for the distance, we would actually be looking for the radius. So the distance formula would typically be d equals, but I'm going to say r equals, and it's a really long square root, and it's the x coordinates plus the y coordinates. Now, the x coordinates will always be subtract. So for this, it's going to be x subtract h. And for the y coordinates, it'll be y subtract k. Okay, so that is the distance formula to find the radius. But B says square both sides of the equation to eliminate the square root. So in order to do that, if I square this side, I must also square this side. And when I do that, that's going to produce this equation. It is going to be r squared equals, and this square is going to undo the square root. So it is going to be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared. So that is going to be the standard equation of a circle with center h and radius r. Now, we need to really pay attention to these three variables, h, k, and r, if we are going to be writing equations of circles. So number one says write the standard form of the equation of a circle given the center and the radius. Then it says check to see if point A is on the circle. So I need you to notice that the center, the coordinates of the center will be h and k, and the radius, of course, will be r, and this right here is an x, y coordinate. So if you look in the previous equation, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 variables. Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 variables. So if we are going to write the standard form of an equation, we need to know all 5 things. So here I have h is -3, I have k as 0, r of course is square root 13, and then I've got my x and y. Now this right here, we're going to hold off on that because if we're writing an equation, we have to have our x, y variables in there. So I'm going to substitute hn, kn, and rn. So these are the three most important ones. So here we go. X minus h, so that will be minus a -3, so plus 3 squared, plus y minus k, which in this case is 0, equals the radius squared. So now cleaning this up, we have quantity x plus 3 squared plus y squared equals, the square undoes that square root, so that is 13. So the equation for the circle is right here. Okay, so that's the equation. Now to address this, check to see if point A is on the circle. So what we do is we plug in x and y into the equation of the circle. So I now have -6 plus 3 squared plus 2 squared, and I'm going to check to see if that equals 13. Now you can mental math this. This is going to be -3 squared, so that's 9, and that's going to be 4, and 9 plus 4 is 13. So what we can say here is that point A is on the circle. And this is the equation of the circle. Now, number 1 is an example that gives us all of the information we need. We must have an R, an H, and a K. The HK is the center, and that R, of course, is the radius. So number 2 says write the standard form equation of the circle with the given information. Now this time they give us the center, which that is the H and the K. So H is going to be 3, K is going to be -5, but they give us the circumference of the circle. Well, we need the radius. The radius is what we are missing. So we have to recall the circumference formula of a circle. That is 2 pi r, or pi d, but since I'm looking for r, I'm going to do 2 pi r. C, they're telling us, is 8 pi, and that is equal to 2 pi r. If I'm solving this for r, I divide by 2 pi, and I'm going to get 4 equals r. So that is the missing piece of the puzzle to write the equation of the circle. Now we're going to plug in what we know. We have x subtract h squared plus y subtract a -5, so that's going to turn into a +5, equals 4 squared. So in the first thing you do, and you put everything in, everything squared. Now clean it up. X minus 3 squared plus y plus 5 squared equals 16. So that is the equation in standard form of this particular circle that we were given. So now, moving on, it says use the graph to write the standard form of the circle. So remember, we need 3 things. We need H, K, and R. So HK is going to come from the center. So if I look at this circle, the center will be right there because I go right 2 and I go up 3. So the center is going to be 2, 3. The radius is going to be a 2. That is 2 units right there. So the radius is a 2. So now plugging in what I know, x minus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared. Remember, that is h, that is k. H goes here, k goes here, equals 2 squared, which is going to be 4. Now, that is the equation of the circle. Now, I'm going to ask you to see if you notice something right here. The center of the circle made me go right 2 and up 3 from the origin. So it went right and then up. So my question is, do you see the transformations? Do you see the transformations? Now, when I teach Algebra 1, this H and K, I use hips and knees. The hips move us side to side and the knees move us up and down. So the -2 took me right 2 because you have to do opposite, and the -3 do opposite, it takes me up. Now, to get the radius, you square root that. So when we start graphing circles, we're going to do the transformations here. Okay, so let's do number 4 real quick. Notice, do not be tricked. You see this right here is a 5, and this right here is a 15. So the scale on this one is actually by 5s. So the first thing we need to do is to find the center. And the center of the circle is going to be right there. And that is going to be a 5, 0. Now if that is 5 units, then the radius is going to be 10 units because it's 2 of those. So now the equation of the circle would be x subtract h squared plus y subtract 0 squared, that is just y squared, equals 10 squared for 100. So that is the equation of the circle pictured. Now, question 5 is going to ask us to go backwards. This one says find the center and the radius and then graph it. So this is when we're going to actually go backwards like we used to do with transformations. So here the center is going to be, if I'm looking at the h and k, the x does not have anything with it, so the h would be 0. Now if this is a plus 2, when I bring it out it must be negative 2. Now since this is 9, we must square root 9 to get the radius of 3. So first we need to plot the center, 0, negative 2, and a radius of 3 would go here, 1, 2, 3 here, 1, 2, 3 here, 1, 2, 3 here. Now I like to try to make all of those. That will help me draw a better circle, okay? It's not going to be perfect because I'm not using a compass, but it's going to help me connect the dots a little bit better. Now, moving on to question 6, this one right here has a little bitty typo. This should be +1 right here. So that's +1. So there's the equation, and then it wants me to translate it up to write 1. So the first thing I need to do is I need to find the center of this original problem. So the center of the original problem, opposite of +1 is -1, opposite of +1 is -1, and the radius is going to be square root 16, which is 4. Then it wants me to translate it up to. Now up to is going to be a y coordinate. Right 1 is going to be an x coordinate. So if I put that together, I'm going to get a 0, 1 with a radius of 4. So this right here is after you translate it. So now I'm going to plot 0, 1. And this is going to run off the graph, and that's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to be the picture of question 6. Now, question 7 says the point -3, 4 is on the circle with center -1, 2. Write the standard equation of the circle. Now, this is what we've got going on. We have an x and we have a y. Center gives me h and k. What are we missing? We must find r first. We cannot write an equation of this circle until we find r. So the question is, how do we find r first? Well, remember when we started, there was 5 variables in the equation. So what we're going to do, we are going to look at the equation. This is what we are dealing with. This is our standard form of a circle. So we have an x and a y here. We have an h and a k here. Well, if we plug those 4 variables in, that's going to tell me r. So that's the first thing we're going to do. So r equals, okay, x minus h. So -3 subtract a -1. Okay, and that's all squared, so that's really plus right there. Plus 4y subtract 2 squared. Continue to clean it up. Here I'm getting -2 squared. Here I'm getting +2 squared. So r is going to equal 4 plus 4, which equals square root 8. So now I have my h and my k. So here's my h. And I have now my r. My r is square root 8. So now I can plug it into the formula. So x, center, plus 1, because remember negative minus a negative will turn it positive. And then we're going to do that for y. Y subtract 2 squared equals r squared. Now when I do r squared here and I square the square root 8, that's going to make it drop out and just become 8. So that is going to be a lot more steps rather than just giving us a picture, okay? But that's how we would do it if they did not give us R. Now, question 8 makes us even go a step further. It says the endpoints of a diameter of a circle is -8, 2, and 2, 0. Write the equation of the circle. And circle is misspelled there, so let's fix that. Write the equation of the circle, okay? So here we go. We are given nothing, okay? Basically, we're just given coordinates of a diameter. That's all we're given here. So the first thing we need to do, if this is that diameter, we need to find the center of a diameter. So we're basically going to have to find the midpoint. So for the center, we need to find the midpoint. So we are going to use the midpoint formula. So -8 plus 2 divided by 2 and 2 plus 0 divided by 2 is going to give me -6 divided by 2, -3, and that's going to give me 1. So now that's my center, okay? I now have the h and the k. Now the radius, okay, we've got to figure out what the radius is. So there's several different ways to do this. It doesn't matter. You can do this 2 different ways, so I'll show you both ways. You can do distance formula of that diameter and divide by 2, or you can do the distance formula between one point and the midpoint. So it doesn't matter which one you do, okay? You will get the same answer. So for us, since we're given these here, let's go ahead and just do the distance of those 2 points. So for this one, we're going to have 2 subtract -8, so that's positive, plus 0 subtract 2 squared. So that is going to be 100. This one's going to be 4. So the distance is square root 104. Now we have to take half of that, and in geometry we like to keep things in exact radical. So we're going to break down square root 104. We'll use our calculator to help us. 104 divided by 2, divided by 2, divided by 2. Okay, so 2 of these 2's will come out, and then 1 will stay in with the 13, so that is 2 square root 26. Now that is the distance. We are looking for the radius. So to find the radius, we divide this by 2, and the radius is going to equal square root 26. Now, here we have everything we now need. We have an h, we have a k, and we have the r. So now we plug into our formula. So the formula will be x subtract the -3, so plus 3 squared, plus y subtract the k, which is 1 squared, equals radius squared. If I square that, that is just going to be 26.